Hey, you. Yeah, you. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever you gotta do if you enjoyed this video or any other videos that I do. It really helps the channel grow and it really helps me out. But, most importantly, in this video I'm doing an interview with a close friend. We've been friends for a long time, and it'd be really great if you could look in the description where I left his channel, check out some of his videos, and make sure to hit the subscribe button for him. I really like the guy, we've been friends for a while, and it would mean not only a lot to me, but a lot to him if you stop by and check this stuff out. So, with all that out of the way, thank you so much, and let's get right to the video. Welcome everybody to one of the first videos that I've ever done like this, sort of like an interview style, and we have a really cool guest this time, a really special friend, a really old friend, really cool guy. You may know him, you may love him, you might hate him. His name is Chris Mayek. Chris, welcome to the channel.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for being on. I mean, as an old friend, a close friend from a while ago, you know, we used to always talk about anime and stuff, our affinity for 90s anime. Hopefully that's still stayed intact, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. But if you don't know about Chris, I'll put a little bit of information on screen, link his channel below, and put it on the screen. But Chris primarily does interviews with very popular, very either well-known or stuff that really people that don't really have too many interviews on them, or you know, the whole range. He does people in the anime industry and does videos over his interviews with them, and I find them very entertaining. I'm sure you find them very entertaining. Obviously they're very entertaining because, you know, a lot of people watch them. He's got a very large subscriber base. But explain to me the sort of, like, I guess we can just jump right into it. How, like, what led up to that? What was the decision? You were just sitting down one day and you thought, I really want to interview somebody. Like, how did it happen?
Well, it was I think it was around right when COVID started getting prevalent enough to shut things down. And then in April of 2020, there was this event that GalaxyCon was doing where they were letting you virtually meet different voice actors from My Hero Academia, and I had always really liked Eric Vale, who most people probably know for one single role if you could pick, as Trunks in Dragon Ball Z, but he's also Shigaraki in the dub of My Hero Academia, and Yuki in Fruits Basket, and Sanji in the Fruits. I always loved him for Fruits Basket, and then I paid like however much it was to virtually meet him for 8 minutes, and then we did that, and then I just realized that a lot of the voice actors that I grew up with or liked the most hadn't done any interviews that talking about roles that I liked them the most for myself, so I just thought that, hey, I'm gonna try and start reaching out to people without having to pay for it and see where it goes. Unfortunately, it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it worked out. You have voice actors from every walk of life pretty much when it comes to anime, animation, cartoons, and it's honestly a genuinely impressive record. I mean, you go on your YouTube page, it's just, you gotta scroll for a long time because that's how many people you've interviewed. But like, I guess, so you got, that's how you started. You were like, okay, I have this vision, I interview this person, or I not necessarily interviewed, but I had a one-on-one talk with this person. This is something that I enjoy doing. But what would you say is, in your opinion, the most stressful part about it? Because now you have your base, but what was the most stressful part about sort of starting it, or when you're going into an interview?
Well, it just depends on who the guest is, obviously, but if they have a lot of credits, or if they've been having their career for a long time, then there's been several times where I make a point prior to beginning the interview where I'm like, okay, I definitely have to bring this up, and then I just end up not bringing it up. I mean, yeah, there's not really like a whole lot of really stressful parts about it. I think the only time where it was really stressful was there was one that I did with a pretty prolific modern generation name voice actress, and for whatever reason, she claimed that she couldn't hear or see me very well, and then so I had to switch to recording it on my phone, and none of it ended up being recorded because if you do all of your streaming or recording on Zoom, you have to have it backed up to the cloud, and I'm always used to using my laptop, so none of it ended up being recorded, and then she wasn't willing to redo it later. But I mean, I think something like that was always going to happen to interviewers, like at least once, especially when you're just starting out. So that's the only, I guess, most stressful moment that I've ever had so far.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember you telling me about that. And it's a shame that you never got it rescheduled, but like you said, stuff happens. But I guess, so there's not anything too stressful. I mean, for a professional such as yourself, for a man of such high quality, it makes sense there's not that many problems. But I guess it's sort of leading into it, what sort of planning do you usually do? What does it look like trying to schedule something? Or, okay, this week I'm going to get with this person. Or is it merely just sort of a game of luck, a game of chance of like, okay, well, this person's open, let's just do it this one?
Yeah, it just depends on what their availability is like. Obviously, it takes longer to nail down someone like Yuri Lowenthal or Wendy Lee or someone like that when they're constantly working and they're constantly directing, or they have children, or sometimes it just takes a really long time. But the most important thing with this is that you just have to be patient and not send people too many messages or scare them off, because it's obviously, like, regardless of what profession it is, it's really easy to annoy people or offend them and just not make them want to do interviews. So you just have to be really careful and just keep touching base. If you don't hear back from them, but always be polite but persistent.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If I were an actor, I wouldn't want to be pestered about an interview, especially, just getting constant emails about it. But I think you've done a good way, I think you've handled it in a good way. Because, I mean, obviously it shows from all the interviews you've managed to secure. But, so we've talked about the process sort of leading into it. We talked about what sort of got you into interviewing. But is there any sort of inspiration for this interviewing that you kind of draw from, or any sort of role models that you have, like other interviewers, or anything specific that sort of models or molds how you do things?
Not really anyone specific. I guess naturally, as I kept doing more of them, I figured out signature questions that I now have with voice actors actors too, but voice actors specifically. I guess once I just kept doing more of them and I got better equipment, and based off their answers, certain people's answers just made me think of some signature questions, and that's pretty much how that happened. There wasn't really any specific inspiration or people that I watched. I mean, depending on who it is, if I have something booked with someone, then I'll always research whatever interviews they've done and listen to most of the podcasts they've done to pull information out or something like that. But yeah, I kind of just figured things out on my own from just doing them and naturally trying to get better at it.
Makes sense. You actually brought up something that is a great question. How much research goes into this? Like, obviously for like you, I've talked to you before, we've been friends for years, so I can just, have a conversation with you and just ask you stuff about things that I know or things that I've watched from your videos. But like, let's just say someone random, like a voice actor or someone you may not know as much of, do you research a whole lot of, or you just sort of wing it and go right into it?
No, yeah, I mean, if it's someone who's had a long career already, and if they've done interviews before, then I definitely always go through and listen to or watch other interviews they've done and try to scour for whatever platform they're on as much as I can, because I think it's always important to, regardless of who you're interviewing, I think it's always important, if you can, to pull a piece of information out that they haven't talked about very much or hardly ever, or it's some story that, like a random job they had before getting into acting or something funny like that. And I think it's always important to research and show that you care and you're not just, asking all the same things that they get asked on a regular basis.
Yeah, that would make sense. If I were to be asked the same question, like, oh, how was your, like, if I were, let's just pick an actor. If I were like Sean Simul, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. If I was like, how do you like playing Goku? If somebody asked me that like a bajillion times, yeah, it'd start to get a little old. But
Yeah.
I completely understand, and that's actually a lot of care that you put into your part of finding these roles. And I know a lot of the characters that a lot of the actors that you pick, you oftentimes have their different roles than most people would ask, or like older roles, because both of us enjoy 90s anime. Sometimes you ask questions about those older roles that they may not have as much recollection about, and I think that's something that shows a lot of not just attention to detail, but a lot of care on your part. So give yourself a pat on the back. Good job, my friend.
Thanks.
No, thank you, Mr. Chris Mayek. But so we kind of went over the process, the researching process, what it takes to go in, how you're, if you're nervous at all going into it. But what are you thinking during the process? Do you sort of write your questions down and go, bit by bit, or you just sort of go into it and like, okay, I'm gonna ask this question next, or I'm gonna do this one next, based off of their response? Like, what are you thinking during the interview process?
Yeah, it's more the second thing you said about basing some of my questions off their answers and kind of going in that train of questioning. But no, I don't think I've ever really. There's been a few times where I had things typed out in notes on my phone, but for the most part, I don't ever write anything down. I just have their credit list up, and then I just kind of go in order. But with certain roles, I make a point if I'm personally a fan of them, or if I think it's something that's really dark, or they had to do a lot of intense acting with it, I make sure to bring that up. But yeah, mostly I just have their credit list up, and I just go in order with what I ask about.
Pretty solid. So that's sort of the process of what you're thinking during it. But what are I know you said you had some problems before in terms of more technical stuff, but what are some other problems that you can face as an interviewer?
I guess a big one is people canceling last second, or just asking to push it back at the last second, and that's happened many times now. And that's, even though it can be annoying, that's just something that you have to get used to. I mean, sometimes it can be really frustrating, especially if you've had a bad day, or there's stuff going on in your personal life that's unrelated to it. But I think the most important thing is, you can't let that bother you either. You just have to, regardless of how annoyed you are about it, you just have to be respectful and be patient, and as long as you still get to talk to them, then that's what matters in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's a W in my book, as long as you still get to have your interview with them and whatever it may be. But I mean, that's still a pretty cool thing to be able to talk to them in the first place. Some of these people are, voice actors that I grew up with, others grew up with, and others are growing up with now. So it's pretty, in my opinion, it's pretty cool to be able to just talk to them in the first place. They're these big name people, and even if they're not super big name, they're still people and characters that I enjoy watching. So that's pretty nice. Okay, now I have a question about your earlier days on YouTube before we go right back into more interviews, because this kind of pertains to it as well. In terms of the songwriters and singers that you got to voice act, what was the first thought? Because obviously you have your videos with meeting Eric Vale, and then the two videos before, but you didn't start out with voice actors. You started out with more singer-songwriters. So what was the thought process in going into singer-songwriters?
Yeah, I mean, I still have interest in that. I just don't. I haven't landed anyone who is in the music industry for a while. I don't know. I was friends on Facebook with a lot of them already. Just certain people, famous people in the industry, whatever industry they're in. Some of them are nice enough where they just accept whoever adds them on Facebook, and then I just once I started getting the idea to do interviews, I was just asking them, PMing them, and I was already fans of these people. Like I don't ever interview anyone that I'm not personally a fan of for something. So I don't know, interviewing people in the music industry, it's a little bit different than interviewing actors or voice actors, but it's sort of similar because if there's a song that you really like, or if you know their credit list of, them playing on an album or singing background vocals for somebody, then it's kind of the same thing where you just go through their credit list and ask them what their memory was of, working on this album or playing on this album or writing this song for so-and-so. So it's similar, more similar in that regard than I think a lot of people would expect.
Yeah, well, you kind of answered my next question there, so good job. I was going to ask what the difference was between interviewing an actor and interviewing a singer-songwriter per se, or anybody in the music industry, but I'm glad to know that there is, at least in some part, a difference. But so your first... so go ahead and tell me a little bit about your first voice actor interview, and then maybe if you'd like to as well, your first ever interview.
Okay, well, my first voice actor was, I believe it was Katie Griffin, who was she's primarily known for being the original English voice of Sailor Mars before Viz redubbed it in the late 2010s. That was fall of 2020. I had just asked her on her social media after I had done a few music industry people. She was lovely. She was great. People who know her, she's always been amazing. And people who grew up with the original Sailor Moon dub that was on TV and Cartoon Network, and a lot of people my age or older still have a big affinity with that. And she was lovely. She was definitely one of the nicest people I've talked to in general. And then my first interview period back in the summer before that, summer of 2020, was another actor that I'm acquainted with who is in the Chicago area, who's a little bit younger than me. They're closer to your age. His name is Beck Nolan. And we had been friends on social media for a bit, and I just, once I got this idea to start doing interviews myself, I just thought that he would be a good person to do it with first. And that was back when for a while I did them all on Skype before switching to Zoom, because Zoom was just a lot easier. And if people want to use Skype, that's fine. I would recommend Zoom the most. But yeah, those were my first two interviews, and for first voice actor and then first interview period.
And then it all kicked off from there with all of these voice actors and singer-songwriters under your belt, all of these countless hours, hundreds of hours of interviews. What would you say, in your opinion, is the most satisfying or most rewarding part of being able to interview people?
Well, for me, it's a lot of, when I get to do voice actors that kind of like what you said, that I grew up with, or a lot of people grew up with. It's still surreal, sometimes, and it's just opportunities that I would have never expected to have. So I guess that's the most satisfying part about it. People like Veronica Taylor and Wendy Lee and Yuri Lowenthal, Tara Platt. It's just, it's hard to believe sometimes, like with who I get, but you can't let that control your brain. Otherwise you get out of your head and you forget what you want to ask and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. What are some of the, I guess, so we talked about the most satisfying part of it. We talked about, the process leading up to it, what you're thinking during it, but now we can talk about maybe some of the funniest responses you've gotten. And I know on your channel, I've watched them. You have compilations of, your funniest moments. But besides the stuff that you included, what are some other funny, weird, even moments that you have, or responses or questions that you may have asked that distinctly stand out in your brain out of all the interviews you've had?
Well, yeah, I mean those funny. I mean those are almost all those funny moments. Those are just things that end up happening during the interviews. Obviously, those aren't planned or anything. But I don't know. I mean, I guess so far the overall like the funniest or most eclectic, in a good way, person I've had on wasn't very long ago. It was Tabitha St. Germain, who she's a Canadian voice actress that for anime she's probably best known for being Gotenks in the Canadian Ocean dub of Dragon Ball, Kajimina and Taro, Way and Gundam Seed, Roberta in Black Lagoon. That's probably her most well-known anime role, but aside from that, she's a Rarity in My Little Pony. But,
I know.
Yeah.
Maybe exposing my bronyship here. I'm not a huge My Little Pony fan, but I'm not gonna lie. Back in the day, I kind of used to watch My Little Pony. That show was pretty good, and Rarity is my favorite. So it was a very satisfying interview to have watched. So
yeah, well, she was just because I didn't expect her to until I got on the interview, until we started. She had written out a whole list of random questions that weren't related to anything. They were just totally random.
Yeah.
Questions to ask me in case she didn't remember a role I asked her about. So there's several times sprinkled throughout the interview where she just asked me like totally random funny questions, like believing in ghosts or being abducted by aliens, or like what my last meal would be if I was going to be executed, just crazy stuff like that. So she was definitely my funniest interview moment in general so far.
It definitely sounds like a fun interview process to be a part of. Also, by the way, any videos or any things that we're mentioning, I'll go ahead and put on screen, and a link will pop up on the little card. So if anybody watching would like to see that, go ahead and check it out. But really, any of his videos, Mr. Chris Mayek, any of their videos are pretty good. So you can really click on anything and then just begin your journey, because I think they all uphold a very high quality, and a lot of nice questions are being asked regardless of who the voice actor is. So just go ahead and check them out. But so we went over a bunch of different things involving the interview process, funny moments, but what are some maybe tips, tricks, techniques, secrets you may pass on to anybody else that is looking to do interviews in the same vein or same fashion as you, or maybe just completely different category, maybe not acting, maybe something like screenwriters or something, or writers or whatever. What is some knowledge you can pass on to the masses?
Well, I would just say, this is the main thing I say to people who want to do it in general, regardless of how old they are, but a lot of people who reach out are around our age. I just say the most important thing is to be polite, and be polite but persistent, and don't figure out people's email addresses unless they're public information or you get them directly from that person, because obviously that's going to overstep boundaries, and it's not going to lead to you being able to talk with them. So those are the two most important things I would say, is just be persistent but polite. And then,
I mean, that makes sense. If someone were to randomly find my email, message me about something, I would feel a little less inclined, especially if it's not public information. I'd feel a little less inclined to talk to them, because I don't know, to me this just sends off a red flag. But I think that's a very important and very crucial bit of information that you added. Very true. Some people overstep boundaries, and we're not calling you a bad person, but just keep in mind how that makes another person feel to have their information found out or to have their email blown up by somebody they don't know. And like Chris said, that probably won't land you an interview, and I wouldn't recommend trying it just as much as he won't recommend trying it. I'm not in the interviewing industry or channel-wise or YouTube scene, but I mean, you know, it doesn't take a smart person, it doesn't take rocket science to figure that out, but that is very crucial information. Most of the time people forget that, regardless if it's an interview or if they're just trying to get a hold of somebody. So I think that's a very wise thing to have, you know, included in this. So thank you, Mr. Chris Mayek. Alright guys, we're back. We had a little bit of technical issues there. My headphones decided to go a little derp mode, so I couldn't hear any of the output, like audio. I hope you can please forgive me, Mr. Chris Mayek. Please forgive me.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Thank you. I've been graced by the forgiveness of Mr. Chris Mayek. But we left off, I believe, on what was it? The funniest moments? Or no.
You had asked me advice I have for...
yes. Yeah. Advice. We were going over the great advice that you gave of basically just not being weird. Just don't be a weirdo. Just don't blow up somebody's email, which I think is very solid advice. But those are some tips you have for some people. Do you have any, like, maybe specific to the anime industry or the anime voice acting scene, like any specific tips or maybe specific questions to ask or things to avoid?
I mean, I guess it's not just for people who are anime voice actors, but don't like do impressions of people's characters or just like ask them to do voices during the interview. I mean, maybe doing that like once is fine. I've found anyway that if you just ask what people think about a character or how they got into that vocally, if it's not their own voice, or just do the voice on their own, because it's just not really respectful if you're, especially if you're trying to be professional, if you're just like constantly asking someone to do a voice, because that's not really what they're there for.
Yeah, you said that, and it just kind of made me laugh. Just picturing a scene of like, hey, can you yeah, I don't know if have you seen Shrek, what's it called? Shrek 3, I believe. Do you know what I'm talking about? Shrek 3, Shrek the Third?
Yeah.
There's a scene in the movie where this little fat kid goes up to Shrek and he's like, do the roar. And that's what I'm picturing whenever somebody's like, hey, just, you know, voice act. Hey, do Goku's voice. Hey, do Goku's voice. And then it's just them just sitting there with the most annoyed look on their face. I would be annoyed if somebody asked me. I mean, I enjoy like making funny voices and stuff or saying things, but if I had an interview and every single time somebody asked me to do a voice, I could see how that gets annoying. So good advice. Good what not to do. But are there any sort of other things you'd like to say about the interviewing process, or anything that I didn't touch on, any other questions I didn't quite ask just yet before I lead on to my final thing?
Not really. I guess just yeah, if you want to do this, just know that it's really not impossible. You just have to build up a resume, I guess, and at least to make yourself stand out, you have to do research and make sure that you talk about things that people aren't talking about on a regular basis, or if you do want to talk about roles that people are most known for, then at least try to approach it from a different perspective that they haven't already encountered frequently. So yeah, that's really the last thing I can say that we haven't already talked about. It's just that this really isn't impossible to do. It's just you just have to do the right things and, you know, be respectful and professional, and that's, hopefully it'll work out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've gone over the entire interviewing process that you go through, but we haven't asked a whole lot of questions about yourself, Mr. Chris Mayek. So Mr. Chris Mayek, I greatly apologize. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are some of your favorite foods, maybe some favorite things to do besides voice acting? Like what's a day in the life of Chris Mayek look like?
Some of my favorite things besides interviews, well, Well, I have a lot of different hobbies, but I guess as you know, but other people don't know, my main hobby outside of interviews is collecting production artwork for anime back when anime was produced all traditionally. And for people who aren't aware, the way that not just anime but almost anything was created prior to the digital age taking over was animation studios had to hand draw and hand paint and paint every background in an animated series by hand, and then they had to animate it in a flipbook style kind of way. And so that was how anything Western animation, anything anime was entirely created before. With anime, it stopped around the early to mid 2000s. I think once Inuyasha shifted into digital, that was one of the last things that was animated with cels. At least half of it, or a little more than half. But yeah, that's my main hobby, and it's hard for people to really understand unless they see it in person that cels are, it's like the real thing that you see on screen. It's a piece of what you see on screen. It's vintage from the animation studio. It's not something that a fan artist recreated. It's the real deal that was the exact same thing that you're seeing on screen or on your phone or whenever, however you're watching an episode or a movie of something. So yeah, that's been my main hobby ever since I was probably about 12, but I didn't get serious about it or really have the money to get serious about it until I was about done with high school, obviously.
Yeah. So. I'm actually really glad that you included that because, since we started being friends, it's always been, we've always talked about cels and like the older anime stuff. And I remember, well, I guess I know what it is, but what would you say in your opinion then on cels that is your most favorite one that you've ever owned?
Well,
it's got to be like the Genshin one, right?
Yeah, well, I guess the centerpiece of my collection right now, and I don't think I'll get rid of it, but it's an opening cel from the second opening theme of Rurouni Kenshin, from the beginning of it when he's all faded in blue and he's walking through heavy snowfall. It's just like I had actually already owned another cel of him from that sequence years ago, and I regrettably sold it, and I bought another one back recently, and it's hard to describe how it looks like in person. It's just incredible, and fortunately, whoever was taking care of both of the ones I owned, they still look amazing after almost over 25 years. Yeah. So they were kept in really good shape.
Yeah, I've seen that on your story and like on your post. We talked about it. It's a pretty cel, I'm not gonna lie. It's a really nice scene, in my opinion. I don't know if it's my favorite Kenshin opening, but it is really solid. One half is pretty solid. Definitely my favorite arc of the entire series. I really like that
for
arc.
Sure.
But I guess then we can ask some more questions related to that. What are some of your favorite anime, Mr. Chris Mayek? Because obviously, you're very into anime. You interview people that work in the industry. So what are some of your favorite series?
Well, I mean, I guess my single favorite one would be Kenshin, but some other ones are the later seasons of Sailor Moon, like Sailor Moon S, Super S, the original Fruits Basket, Fushigi Yugi, Nightwalker, which a lot of people don't know about, but I've always loved Nightwalker. It's a late 90s horror mystery series. Let's see, some more modern anime. I love The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, which I know you do too.
I love that show.
Yeah. And super recently, I guess, like a lot of people, I love Demon Slayer, and I've just recently got into the anime adaptation of Komi Can't Communicate. I think that's fantastic. Some other ones that I love, that I will always love, are Ranma 1/2. Just a lot of random short OVAs from the 90s or 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, those are some of my favorite series, a handful of them.
Yeah, and out of everybody I've ever talked to, including the other people on this channel, I feel like your list I like the most. Like there is nothing wrong with anything that you said. Like with my other friends, and, they could say something weird, like the Monogatari series. It's a good series. It's just a little strange. Or they could say some just animes that I'm like, yeah, it's okay. But everything that you just said, yeah, I like it. I mean, obviously, because we became friends over the fact that we like 90s style anime. I think it was Kenshin.
Yeah.
But pretty solid. And what's also super cool? Most of the shows you just listed, you have done interviews with the voice actors for. I'm sure it's an incredibly satisfying, rewarding, and accomplishing feeling. Do you feel happy about that?
Yeah, that's the. I mean, I touched on it earlier, but that's one of the biggest things that's still surreal to me about it. Especially with people like Bridget Hoffman, who up until I'd probably have to tell you or people who don't know who she is. She was Mima. She was the lead in Perfect Blue. She was Fuho Oji in Magic Knight Ray Earth. She was Cosmos in the Xenosaga games. She was Miyaka, the female protagonist in Fushigi Yugi. She's Ryoko Asakura in Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. Tons of 90s and 2000 shows. Yeah, I mean, she was one of my favorites that I've done, just because I discovered Fushigi Yugi at a really scary time in my childhood, and everybody who was in that, but especially her, I kept their voices in my head with me for the rest of my life. And she's very private. Bridget's very private. She's not on social media at all, and I was fortunate that another voice actress that I interviewed in her circle provided me with her email contact, and unfortunately, I didn't necessarily expect her to respond. She did, and then it was July of last year that my interview was with her, and that's just one of my favorite ones I've done, because she's so talented and she's so incredibly kind. I always bring her name up with if people I know, other voice actors I know would know her if they're around her same circle or time frame. I always bring her name up because everyone has a story about her. And I would recommend anyone listening to this who doesn't know who Bridget Hoffman is, I would look her up, because she's just one of the best people working in English dubs, period.
Yeah, and I'll provide a little info card popping up right now for you guys to sort of go check out the interview. Because, very passionate about this. I'd like people to be able to watch that. But before we move on to our final thing, is there anything else you'd like to tell me about yourself, or maybe some future projects you'd like to work on, or some people you'd like to work with?
Well, yeah, I've been fortunate enough to interview a number of people that were on my wish list, so to speak, but there's still a few that I have that I've hoping will still happen eventually. A big one is Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who I think a lot of people would distinctly know as Motoko Kusanagi, the lead in Ghost in the Shell. But she's been in tons of other stuff. She was Kurenai in Naruto. She was Bird in Oh My God. She was Noriko in Fushigi Yugi. She was Julia in Cowboy Bebop, and also the director of Cowboy Bebop. She's one of the main people on my wish list still. There's a few other people, but I have some. I have some pretty big names, voice actors this coming week. One of them is tomorrow, actually. So, just always growing my channel, always hoping to get more people on, regardless of their status. Lately, I've really enjoyed if anyone plays Fire Emblem Heroes, the mobile version of the Fire Emblem franchise, I've been doing a lot of interviews correlated to the Fire Emblem subreddits on Reddit, and giving a chance to have those voice actors tell their stories, because a lot of them are around in our age range, and Fire Emblem Heroes is their first professional voiceover role. So I've been doing a lot of that lately, and we'll still continue to do that. But yeah, that's just some of the final things I can say before your question.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for answering these questions. I really appreciate it. And we're going to move on to a little something special. Now, a few of you guys listening, if you like Hololive, if you like Kiara, you may recognize this. But Mr. Chris Mayek, I know you're unfamiliar with Hololive and unfamiliar with Miss Kiara Takanashi, but she does this thing at the end of her interview called a speed round, where she asks questions. One question will be like, do you like Naruto or Sasuke, right? It just sort of, you have two options and you pick one of them, and you got to think fast. So I'm going to ask you down this list of questions, and you tell me what your favorite is. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, hot or cold weather?
Cold.
Would you prefer pizza or hot dogs?
Pizza.
Do you like Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram.
Coke or Pepsi?
Neither.
What would you go with? If it's not Dr. Pepper, then we might have a problem.
Like a soda in general, or?
Sure.
I don't know. I guess Sprite. Sprite's fine.
I'll give you a pass on that one. Would you rather climb a mountain or run a marathon?
Probably marathon.
Are you a PC person or console person?
Console. I still have I don't really have any games for it anymore, but I still have my PS2.
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No, never.
Oh God, this interview was going so well. Our friendship might crumble now. I'm a pineapple on pizza person. Sweet or spicy food?
Well, just normal food, probably spicy.
All right. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
A vacation on the beach or in the mountains?
Mountains, yeah, probably mountains.
Do you prefer being on a call, like a phone call, or do you prefer texting?
I mean, I've gotten used to doing calls now. Probably still more texting though, overall.
Would you like giving or receiving presents?
I don't know. I like giving a lot. I like, especially depending on what it is. I like seeing people's reactions to things, catching them off guard, what they wouldn't expect.
What a beautiful heart. What a kind man. And then for my final question, hypothetically, if I were to go to the zoo, this is a yes or no question. If I were to go to the zoo, would you aid me in the stealing of a penguin?
Yeah, I mean, penguins are pretty cute.
They are.
So I guess I would say yes. I'd rather help you steal like a raccoon or a red panda though, just because those are my favorite.
But you don't steal them; they're free. They're everywhere.
Well, I mean, raccoons are, but not red pandas. Yeah.
Oh, red pandas are definitely not. But just for that, I will grant you 55% equity over the penguin that we steal. Well,
okay.
That is. Oh, one more. I just thought of it right now. What is your favorite holiday?
Oh, I like Halloween.
Solid.
A lot.
Solid. I bet you're real happy for the fact that it was just Friday the 13th then.
Yeah, I'm glad that there's multiple times a year that happens. And funny enough, this past Halloween, my Halloween special interview was with Mark Hildreth, who you guys would probably know the most for as Rengoku in Demon Slayer, but and he's also Sethith in Fire Emblem and a ton of other stuff. He's amazingly talented modern gen. Yeah, if you guys would want to go check out my Halloween interview with Mark Felder. I thought that was a really fun one. It's one of my most viewed voice actor interviews. He's a really super, like one of the nicest people working in VO today.
Well, Mr. Chris Mayek, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you so much for doing this little mini interview with me. This is one of the first for the channel. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to plan on doing interviewing. That's all you, man. I just really wanted to interview a close friend, talk to somebody we talk, but not super often, so I like to be able to catch up. And, this is the first interview you've had, so get ready to have more. One day Chris Mayek's name will be synonymous with the best interviewers in the world, so I hope you're ready for that.
Yeah, that's very sweet of you. But yeah, I'm glad that we got to talk too, because we text sort of frequently, but yeah, this is the first real in-depth conversation we've had in a long time. So thanks for doing this.
Oh, of course, and I'd love to have you back over here whenever we can, whenever there's a video that I think you would enjoy doing as well. But thank you so much for your time. Are there any sort of closing statements for me or for the audience?
Yeah, I actually, back when we were talking about this production art in cels, I actually I can spell it out if it's not there, but I linked my gallery that has all my production art that I own in the Discord chat here. But yeah, if you want to put that up for people, just so they can kind of maybe be more aware of what we're talking about, or if they can I guess know more what cels are if they want to see an actual reference.
Oh, of course, I'll gladly put that. That'll be on screen for you guys the moment he mentioned it. And I'll put all of his socials on there as well. Link to his YouTube channel down below and in the info card. And please, guys, make sure to go check him out. He's bigger than me, so I don't really quite know why I'm saying that. But Chris Mayek is a great friend. Love this guy. We've been friends for a long time, so any support I can give to this guy, I'd love to. But thank you so much for being on here. I've been Wanpankun. You've been Chris Mayek. Would you like to say goodbye?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you guys for listening, and this is a really fun chat for me, and hope you guys support Frankie's channel as well, because he's a good. This is a really good first interview.
Oh, thank you. You flatter me too much. But you guys have a great day, and goodbye.